Goodbye to all players.
Squid Game shows that real success takes time and patience, and that great ideas can go unnoticed for a long time. This guy's name is Hwang Dong-hyuk. He wrote the Squid Game script back in 2008, but companies thought his idea was too dark, brutal, and risky. Until Netflix started investing in Korean projects, and then the series got the green light. In the first month, over 110 million watched the series. The second season came out recently, proving it's still a cultural hit. From season 2, I liked the Mingle game best. Which one did you like most? Write in the comments. Despite many game mods from the series' popularity, I wanted to recreate some challenges in a game engine. So let's see how Squid Game would look as a PC game. First, I started on the red light green light layout. It was called Slow and Steady Wins the Race. Not sure of its size in the series, but 100 by 50 meters seemed right. Then I used Photoshop to make a series like background. Adobe's Firefly neural network helped me. I made the field, trees, added clouds and adjusted colors. Next, I used Blender to model the entrance structures. And here's what I got. Then I rendered the house to add it behind the doll. Next, I went back to Unreal, added field textures to walls, placed structures, then added floor material. Then I added stones and cut windows where soldiers shoot. The series had a border for a smooth floor transition. I added a sand decal to the walls to replicate it. Then I worked on the doll. I added a rig and animated it. Next, I wrote the animation logic in the engine. For smoother character movement, I used motion matching. To simulate physics and avoid accordion collapse on death, I set up the physical body and constraints. Next, I worked on player elimination logic. It's simple here. If a player's speed is above 0 after the doll turns, they're out. There won't be an actual shot, just an imitation. I added spawn points for blood and shot sounds. I made logic for random shot points and sounds. After the shot, the player simulates physics, and here's what I got. You can't escape. Next, I worked on characters. MetaHuman helped me here. I chose Asian-looking characters from templates and modified them a bit. Since I'll make the costume elsewhere, I left only shoes. 3 characters will be enough. Then I exported the model to fit the costume. I used Marvelous Designer for this. Being new to it, I watched a dozen tutorials quickly. It's a very cool software. To reference Season 2, I added a chest badge with a tic-tac-toe symbol. Transferring clothes to MetaHuman is quite tedious. To sync character and costume movement, I added a rig and adjusted weights in Blender. Then I placed 2 soldiers by the doll and added a finish line and a time screen. I placed players on the level. 456 players would be too costly, so there are fewer. Next, I wrote the game rules logic. And that's it. Then I decided to create a stair maze. It's one of the favorite locations in the series. She somehow reminds me of an Escher painting. Only when I started recreating it did I realize how complex it was. Even though I needed it for just one render, I spent almost 7 hours on it. So it would be a shame to show its creation briefly, and I decided to make a small time lapse. And here's what came out. I thought one game wouldn't be enough, plus the red light green light game was in the first season and has become quite familiar to everyone. So I decided to recreate another game, but from the second season, Mingle, or as it's called in the localization, Odd One Out. I started creating the layout. Once the sketch was ready, I transferred it to Blender. I began creating the level with the carousel, then I added decorative horses and ribbons. Next, I worked on the cabin, adding a player model as a reference. I created a screen with a countdown timer and a door. Then I made a canopy, adding ribbons and lights. Since there will be a lot of lights, I minimized the polygon count. After everything was ready, I transferred the models to the level and started creating the game logic. The cabin will be implemented as a separate class. It will track the number of players inside, automatically closing the doors when the required number of players is reached. Additionally, the cabin will ensure the player count doesn't exceed the limit, and if it's below the norm, it will notify the guards. Next, I added a light source and set the logic so its shape randomly changes to a triangle, square, or circle. Of course, I didn't forget about the cabin's color. The game mode automatically assigns it rainbow colors, cycling through them. It also numbers the cabins and starts the timer. Next, I made a canopy above the entrance to the game zone. I transferred it to the engine and decorated the entrance with curtains. Then I worked on the upper part of the area, adding walls and a tent. Next, I set up directional spotlighting. Now I just need to write the game logic for the NPCs. They can form groups and run to the nearest available cabin. I added a navigation mesh and checked that NPCs can reach the cabin, and it won't let in extras. Then I wrote the main logic for dividing characters into groups, which is very simple. We take the number of live players and use modulo division to determine the number that leaves the most players. Then, with a slight delay, we send a group of players to the cabins, and the remainder that didn't fit chooses the nearest cabin themselves, and those who don't make it won't be envied. By the way, during editing, I noticed a small mistake in the game rules. If you find it, write about it in the comments. Before I show you the result, please like this video, leave a comment, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already.
Good luck!
Six!
All players return to position. 4. The game is over.
Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see each other very soon. Bye.